They say that on the night General Liu Feng died, his widow did not shed a single tear, but the white butterflies that filled their garden turned crimson and fell like snow made of blood. The servants whispered that she had sold her grief to something ancient and hungry, and perhaps they were right, for what emerged from Lady Mei's sorrow would consume an entire province before the debt was paid. But I get ahead of myself. Let me tell you how love dies, and what terrible thing is born from its rotting corpse. In the 18th year of the Qingyuan Emperor's reign, the northern province of Shulin was known for three things: the sweetness of its osmanthus wine, the silk that shimmered like moonlight on water, and the perfect marriage of General Liu Feng and Lady Mei. Theirs was a love that made poets weep and cynics believe, if only for a moment, in the fundamental goodness of heaven's design. They had known each other since childhood, two families of modest nobility whose estates bordered the whispering forest, where the trees grew so tall and ancient that even the wind seemed to speak in reverent murmurs as it passed through their branches. Liu Feng was everything a hero should be, tall and broad-shouldered, with a face that balanced strength and kindness in equal measure. His sword arm had defended the empire's northern borders against the steppe raiders for 15 years, yet his hands were gentle when they touched his wife's face, when they lifted their daughter, Liu Xiaoyue, into the air to catch the falling blossoms in spring. He was a man who could speak of strategy and poetry with equal eloquence, who treated his soldiers like brothers and his servants like family. And Lady Mei, even now, remembering her as she was before the transformation, my throat tightens with an emotion I cannot name. She possessed a beauty that seemed carved from jade and starlight, but it was her spirit that truly illuminated the world around her. She ran the household with wisdom beyond her 28 years, opened schools for the children of soldiers, and tended a garden where she cultivated rare medicinal herbs to treat the sick and wounded. Her daughter Xiaoyue, just 7 years old, was growing into her mother's grace like a flower following the sun. Every evening when Liu Feng was home from the borders, they would walk together through their butterfly garden, hand in hand, while Xiaoyue danced ahead of them. Lady Mei had spent years cultivating the plants that attracted the white butterflies that were sacred to the moon goddess. Thousands of them lived in that garden. Their wings, catching the twilight like pieces of heaven itself, had drifted down to earth. But empires are built on blood and maintained through betrayal, and happiness is a butterfly that rarely lands for long. The poison came from within, as it always does in stories like this. Marshal Zhao, Liu Feng's commanding officer and the emperor's cousin, had grown fat on bribes from the very raiders Liu Feng fought to repel. For years, he had sold information about troop movements, weapon stores, patrol routes. He had grown rich on silver paid in the blood of the soldiers he commanded. And Liu Feng, with his incorruptible honor and his careful record-keeping, had noticed discrepancies, had begun asking questions, had written a detailed account of his suspicions in a letter to the Minister of War. Marshal Zhao learned of this letter through one of his many informants. The letter would destroy him, would see his entire family executed for treason. So he acted with the decisiveness that made him, despite his corruption, an effective military commander. He invited Liu Feng to his estate for what he called an urgent strategic meeting. This was not unusual. The general arrived as the sun was setting, still dusty from his latest patrol, eager to discuss what he assumed were new threats from the north. He was served wine, the finest osmanthus wine from his own province, in a cup made of white jade. He drank deeply, thirsty from his ride. The poison was called ghost lotus, derived from a flower that grew only in the deepest parts of the whispering forest, in places where no sunlight ever reached. It killed slowly over the course of 3 days, and its symptoms mimicked a fever caught from the border regions. There was no cure, no antidote. By the time the victim realized they had been poisoned, they were already a corpse that had not yet stopped breathing. Liu Feng made it home before the poison began its work in earnest. He had one night, one final beautiful night with his family. They walked in the butterfly garden under a moon so full and bright it seemed close enough to touch. He held his daughter, told her stories of the heroes of old. He kissed his wife under the plum tree where he had first confessed his love to her 15 years before. Lady Mei told me later, in a moment when the darkness had receded enough for her to speak clearly, that she felt something wrong that night. a coldness in his lips, a tremor in his hands, but he smiled and said it was nothing, just fatigue from the road. And she believed him because what else could she do? We believe the people we love because the alternative is to live in constant fear, and that is no way to live at all. By morning, he could not rise from their bed. By midday, the fever had him in its grip like a demon's fist. The physicians came, one after another, each more renowned than the last. They bled him, they applied poultices, they burned incense and chanted prayers to the healing gods. Nothing helped. The fever climbed and climbed, and Liu Feng's powerful body wasted away as though being consumed from within. Lady Mei never left his side. She held his hand, bathed his burning forehead, whispered to him all the private words that lovers share. Their daughter was kept from the room, too young to watch her father die, but her crying could be heard throughout the house, a sound like a small bird whose wings had been broken. On the third day, as the sun began to set, Liu Feng's eyes cleared for just a moment. The fever receded like a wave pulling back from the shore, and he gripped his wife's hand with sudden, desperate strength. "Murdered," he whispered. "Zhao, the letter, protect Xiao Yu, protect yourself. Do not trust, do not..." And then he died, just like that. One moment, a man trying to warn his beloved, the next moment, empty flesh, a shell from which the soul had fled. Lady Mei sat beside his body for a long time, holding his hand as it grew cold. The servant said she did not weep, did not wail, did not tear her robes, or loosen her hair as grieving widows do. She simply sat, her face as still and pale as porcelain, her eyes fixed on her husband's face as though she could hold him in the world through the sheer force of her gaze. It was only when they came to prepare the body, when they tried gently to pry her fingers from his, that she finally moved. She stood, straight and tall, and walked from the room without a word. She walked through the house, through the courtyard, into the butterfly garden where 10,000 white butterflies rested on the flowers and trees, their wings folded in sleep. And this is where the story truly begins, where love ends and something else, something terrible and necessary, takes its place. Lady Mei stood in the center of her garden and felt the grief rising in her like a black tide. It crashed against her ribs, pressed against the inside of her skull, demanded release in tears and screams, and the complete surrender to sorrow. She felt it would tear her apart, that the sheer weight of loss would shatter her bones and burst her heart. But she could not afford to break. Her daughter needed her. Her husband's murderers walked free. There was work yet to be done, and grief, she understood with sudden terrible clarity, was a luxury she could not afford. So she made a choice. A terrible, irrevocable choice. In the Whispering Forest, there were places older than the empire, older than the memory of emperors, places where the spirits of the earth still dwelt, where the old powers that predated gods and demons still held sway. Lady Mei's grandmother had been a shaman before she married into nobility, and she had taught her granddaughter things that proper ladies were not supposed to know, songs in languages that had no name. The way to walk between the trees, so that you entered not just the forest, but the other world that lay beneath it like a shadow beneath the skin. Lady Mei had never used this knowledge, had kept it locked away like a dangerous weapon she hoped never to need. But now, with her husband's body growing cold and her daughter's future hanging by a thread of spider silk, she remembered every word, every gesture, every warning. She walked into the Whispering Forest as the moon rose. She walked for hours, following paths that appeared beneath her feet and disappeared behind her. The trees grew closer together, their branches weaving overhead into a canopy so thick no moonlight penetrated. Strange sounds echoed in the darkness, voices that might have been wind or might have been something else entirely. At last, she came to a clearing, where a pool of water lay still and black as obsidian. Ghost lotus flowers bloomed around its edge, their white petals glowing with a light that came from no earthly source. The air smelled of rot and incense, of ancient earth and older magic. Lady Mei knelt beside the pool and spoke the words her grandmother had taught her. She offered the spirits a bargain. She would give them her grief, all of it, the crushing, unbearable weight of sorrow that threatened to destroy her. She would cut it from her heart and give it to them if they would give her the strength to avenge her husband and protect her daughter. The waters of the pool began to move, though no wind touched them. A voice spoke, old beyond measure, neither male nor female, neither kind nor cruel. Grief is a powerful thing, the voice said. It feeds us, it sustains us. But you do not understand what you offer. Your grief is the price of your love. To give one is to lose the other. You will forget how to weep. You will forget how to feel. You will become a creature of pure purpose, sharp as a blade and just as cold. I accept, Lady Mei said without hesitation. There is more, the voice continued. Grief does not simply disappear. It must go somewhere. We will take it from you and give it form. It will become a creature of vengeance, born from your sorrow and clothed in your rage. It will hunt those who wronged you. It will not stop until they are destroyed, but it will not distinguish between the guilty and the innocent. It will devour everything in its path, feed on suffering as it was born from suffering. Can you bear that price? Lady Mei thought of her husband's final words, of the fever that consumed him, of Marshal Zhao growing fat on corruption while good men died. I accept, she said again. Then drink, the voice commanded, and the waters of the pool rose up like a black flower and touched her lips. The taste was bitter beyond endurance, cold beyond winter, ancient beyond time. Lady Mei drank deeply and felt something tearing loose inside her chest, some fundamental part of herself being pulled out like a thread from cloth. The grief, the love, the sorrow, all of it streaming from her heart into the pool, and with it went her tears, her gentleness, her capacity for mercy. What remained was purpose, sharp, clear, cold as starlight on snow. When she returned to her estate in the hour before dawn, the servants knew immediately that something had changed. Lady Mei moved differently, spoke differently. Her voice had lost its warmth, her eyes their softness. She was beautiful still, but it was the beauty of a sword, of winter ice, of the moon at its coldest phase. She arranged her husband's funeral with meticulous precision. She received the officials who came to offer condolences with perfect courtesy and icy composure. Marshal Zhao himself came, his face arranged in appropriate sorrow, his words smooth as oil. Such a tragedy, he said. The finest soldier I ever commanded. The fever, they say, a terrible thing. You have my deepest sympathies, Lady Mei. She looked at him with eyes that showed nothing, gave away nothing. You are too kind, Marshal. My husband spoke of you often. I remember every word he said. Something flickered in Marshal Zhao's expression, there and gone in an instant. Uncertainty. Perhaps the first cold touch of fear, but by then it was too late for him. By then, the creature had already been born. It happened on the night of Liu Feng's burial, under a moon red as blood. The white butterflies in Lady Mei's garden began to change. Their wings darkened from white to crimson, the colors spreading through them like ink through water. They dropped from the flowers and trees, falling like snow, like rain, covering the ground in a carpet of red wings. And from that carpet, from the mass of transformed butterflies, something rose. Imagine grief given flesh. Imagine sorrow shaped into claws and wings and hunger. The creature was massive, a thing of crimson scales and butterfly wings that stretched wide as a house. Its eyes were black pearls, weeping bloody tears. Its mouth was filled with teeth like shards of obsidian. It moved with liquid grace, beautiful and terrible, born from love and baptized in loss. The servants who saw it flee screaming. Some went mad from the sight. Others ran to the nearest town to warn the authorities. But Lady Mei stood in her garden and watched the creature spread its wings, and she felt nothing at all. "Find them," she whispered. "Find all who wronged him. Make them pay." The creature understood. It was, after all, made from her grief, knew her mind as intimately as she knew her own. It launched itself into the night sky, wings beating the air like a tempest, and flew toward the city where Marshal Zhao kept his grand estate. What followed was a season of blood. The creature found Marshal Zhao's estate and descended on it like a plague. It killed the guards first, quick and efficient, their throats torn out before they could even cry out. Then it moved through the house, methodical and merciless. It found the marshal in his bedchamber, found him trying to flee through a secret passage, and it showed him no mercy at all. The servants heard his screaming for a long time before it stopped, but the creature did not stop there. It hunted down everyone involved in the conspiracy. The soldiers who had helped cover up the marshal's corruption, the merchant who had supplied the ghost lotus poison, the servant who had poured it into Liu Feng's wine. One by one, it found them all and tore them apart. And still it did not stop. This was the price Lady Mei had not fully understood. The creature was born from grief, and grief is not rational, not logical, not capable of fine distinctions. It began to attack anyone associated with those it had killed. Family members, friends, business partners. The circle of death grew wider and wider, a spiral of vengeance that consumed the innocent along with the guilty. Word reached the capital. The emperor sent his finest warriors, his most powerful monks, his most learned sorcerers. They tried to stop the creature, to bind it, to banish it back to whatever realm had birthed it. But it was made from human grief, from love twisted into rage, and such things are not easily unmade. It killed them all. The province of Sholin became a wasteland. People fled their homes, abandoned their farms, sought refuge anywhere the creature had not yet reached. The economy collapsed. Famine followed. The suffering spread like ripples from a stone thrown into still water. On and on until it seemed the entire empire would drown in the consequences of Lady Mei's bargain. And through it all, Lady Mei remained in her estate, cold and empty, feeling nothing. She tended to her daughter, managed her household, went through the motions of living without actually being alive. The servants who remained were terrified of her, of the thing she had become. Little Xiao Yu, just 7 years old, watched her mother turn to ice. The woman who had sung her lullabies and braided flowers in her hair was gone, replaced by something that looked like her mother, but felt like a stranger. The child wept for her father, wept for her mother, wept until she had no more tears left. It was Xiao Yue's weeping that finally began to change things. One night, a full year after Liu Feng's death, Lady Mei heard her daughter crying in her bedchamber. This was not unusual. The child had nightmares nearly every night. Lady Mei would normally go to her, sit beside her bed, say the appropriate words of comfort. But this night, something was different. This night, standing in the doorway listening to her daughter's broken sobs, Lady Mei felt something crack inside the ice that encased her heart. It was small, the crack, no larger than a hairline fracture in porcelain, but through it seeped something she had forgotten existed. Not grief, not yet, but the memory of grief, the ghost of what she had given away. She sat beside her daughter and, moving as though her hands belonged to someone else, stroked the child's hair. "Mama," Xiao Yue whispered, "I miss Papa, I miss you. Where did you go?" And Lady Mei, for the first time in a year, felt her eyes burn. She did not weep, could not weep, not yet, but she felt the place inside her where tears should have been, felt the hollow space where her grief had lived, and understood fully for the first time what she had lost. The next morning, she returned to the Whispering Forest. The journey took her longer this time. The paths were harder to find, as though the forest resisted her return. But eventually she reached the pool with its ghost lotus flowers, its black water that reflected nothing. "I want it back," she said to the darkness, to the ancient thing that dwelt in the deep places. "I want my grief back." The voice that answered was amused, in a way that made her skin crawl. "You offered it freely. The bargain was made. The price was paid." "Then I will pay another price," Lady Mei said. "Name it." "There is no price that can reverse what you have done. Your grief has taken form. It lives, it hunts, it feeds. You cannot simply take it back as though it were a coat you left hanging on a hook. Then tell me how to stop it. Tell me how to end what I began." Silence stretched long and dark. Finally the voice spoke again. "There is only one way. The creature is born from your grief, sustained by your emptiness. To destroy it, you must reclaim what you gave away. You must take your grief back into yourself, all of it, every drop of sorrow you poured into these waters. But understand this. A year has passed. Your grief has grown, has fed on suffering, has drunk deep of death. What you take back will be far greater than what you gave. It will be monstrous, overwhelming. It may destroy you. I don't care, Lady Mei said. I have already destroyed myself. At least this way serves a purpose. Very well, the voice said. Drink. The black water rose again, but this time it did not taste bitter. It tasted of salt and ash, of tears and loss, of every moment of suffering the creature had inflicted, every innocent life it had taken, every grief it had caused. Lady Mei drank and drank, forcing herself to swallow even as her gorge rose, even as her body tried to reject the poison of returned emotion. The pain was exquisite, unbearable. It felt as though her heart was tearing itself apart, as though her soul was being flayed. She felt her husband's death, fresh and raw as the moment it happened. She felt the grief of every person the creature had killed, every family it had destroyed. She felt all of it at once, a crushing weight that drove her to her knees, that tore a scream from her throat that echoed through the ancient trees. And in that moment, in the city 50 miles away, the creature stopped. It had been in the midst of its hunting, had cornered a family whose only crime was being related to someone who had once served under Marshal Zhao. It had raised its claws, opened its terrible mouth, prepared to feed. But suddenly it felt the connection, the invisible cord that tied it to its creator, come alive with sensation. Pain, grief, sorrow, love, all the things it had been made from, now flooding back to their source. The creature's wings folded, its claws retracted. It turned its black pearl eyes toward the west, toward the whispering forest, and it began to move. Lady Mei collapsed beside the pool, curled into herself, sobbing so hard she could not breathe. Every tear she had not shed for a year came at once, a deluge that had been held back by an impossible dam. She wept for her husband, for her daughter, for herself, for every person who had suffered because of her choice. And she felt the creature coming. It arrived at the pool like a crimson storm, wings beating the air, scales gleaming in the moonlight. It landed before her, massive and terrible, and she looked up into its face and saw her own grief reflected back at her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I should have borne you myself. I should have carried you inside me, no matter how heavy you were. I should never have tried to give you away." The creature lowered its great head, and slowly, slowly, it began to change. The scales softened, becoming petals. The wings fragmented, breaking into thousands of individual butterflies. The massive body dissolved, falling apart like a sculpture made of sand, until all that remained was a cloud of crimson butterflies swirling in the air around Lady Mei. She stood, tears still streaming down her face, and opened her arms. The butterflies came to her. They landed on her shoulders, her hair, her outstretched hands. And as each one touched her, it was absorbed into her, not as a physical thing, but as an emotion, a memory, a piece of grief reclaimed and integrated. She felt every life the creature had taken, felt the weight of all that death, and she accepted it, accepted responsibility, accepted the consequences of her choice. The last butterfly to land was the largest. It perched on her palm, its crimson wings slowly fading to white, and she understood that this was the core of the creature, the heart of her grief for Liu Feng. "I loved you," she whispered to it, to him, to the memory of her husband. "I love you still. I always will. And I will carry this pain until the day I die, because that is what love costs." The butterfly's wings trembled once, twice, and then it too dissolved, sinking into her skin, returning to the place inside her heart where it belonged. Lady Mei walked from the whispering forest as dawn broke. The journey back took days, and she wept for all of them, tears carving tracks down her face, her body shaking with sobs. But she walked on, step by step, carrying the unbearable weight of what she had done and what she had reclaimed. When she arrived home, Xiaoyue was waiting in the butterfly garden. The child took one look at her mother's face, saw the tears, saw the grief, saw the love that had returned, and ran into her arms. They held each other and wept together, mother and daughter, bound by loss and by love that survived loss. In the years that followed, Lady Mei devoted herself to rebuilding what her grief had destroyed. She used her family's entire fortune to help those who had suffered, to rebuild homes, to feed the hungry, to care for the orphaned and widowed. She could never fully pay the debt she owed, could never bring back the dead, but she tried. Every day until her death, she tried. She never remarried. She wore mourning white for the rest of her life. And in her garden, she cultivated both white butterflies and red ones, so that they flew together in the twilight. A reminder of love and loss, of the price of trying to escape from pain. When she was an old woman, her daughter grown and married with children of her own, Lady Mei walked one final time into the whispering forest. She came to the pool where she had made her terrible bargain, where she had unmade it, where she had learned that grief cannot be given away, only carried. The ancient voice spoke to her, gentler now than it had been before. "You kept your bargain," it said. "Both of them. You gave your grief and you took it back. You accepted the price and you bore it with honor. Few mortals would have had the strength." "I had no choice," Lady Mei replied. "We never do. Not really. We can only choose what we will become in response to what happens to us." "True," the voice acknowledged. "You have a question for me. I can feel it." "When I die," Lady Mei said, "will I see him again? Will my husband be waiting?" The voice was silent for a long moment. Then, "That is not for me to say. I am a thing of earth and shadow, of old magic and older bargains. I know nothing of what lies beyond death. But I will tell you this. Love that survives such trials, grief that is born with such courage, these things echo in the world beyond the world. If there is any justice in the cosmos, you will find what you seek." Lady Mei smiled. "That will have to be enough." She lived for 3 more years, and when she died, it was peacefully, in her sleep, surrounded by her daughter and grandchildren. They buried her beside Liu Feng, under the plum tree where he had first confessed his love, and planted both white and red flowers on their graves. And on the night of her burial, the butterflies in the garden rose in a great cloud, white and crimson wings mixing together, and they flew west toward the setting sun, toward the whispering forest and beyond, to places where the living cannot follow. The servants said it was the souls of Liu Feng and Lady Mei, finally reunited, flying together into whatever mystery awaits beyond the veil of death. Perhaps they were right, or perhaps it was simply butterflies, drawn by instinct to some distant place where the flowers grew sweet. But I like to think the servants were right. I like to think that love can survive death, that grief born honorably earns its redemption, that what we break can sometimes be remade. After all, the alternative is to believe that pain is all there is, that loss is the end of the story, that the monster born of grief can never be transformed back into love, and that, I think, would be the saddest ending of all.